There's a powerful truth in life that few people are willing to face until it's too late, and it's this: people don't truly see your worth when you're standing in front of them, they see it when you're gone. They don't hear your laughter when it's constant, they don't value your effort when it's consistent, and they don't feel your love when it's always there. But the moment you step back, the moment your voice goes silent, your energy fades, and your presence disappears, everything changes. That's when realization hits. That's when the weight of what they took for granted becomes unbearable. You see people grow comfortable in your light. They start to believe your warmth will always be there, that your forgiveness will never run out, that your loyalty is endless. They stop seeing your presence as a privilege and start treating it as a guarantee. But the truth is, your presence was never a promise, it was a gift. And when that gift is withdrawn, when your silence replaces your constant care, they finally start to feel the truth of what they lost. So today, I want to talk about that moment, the moment they realize what they overlooked, and the moment you rediscover your power, because what happens in your absence isn't just their awakening. It's your rebirth, when someone is constantly present in your life, always there to listen, to comfort, to give, to hold space. It's easy to forget the depth of what that truly means. Their presence becomes part of the background rhythm of your world. You start to assume that they'll always answer the call, always show up, always care. You start to rely on that consistency so much that it feels permanent, but nothing in life is permanent when it's taken for granted. The truth is, presence is one of the most powerful forms of love a person can offer, and yet it's often the one most easily overlooked. You see, people mistake consistency for obligation. They assume that kindness comes without cost, that forgiveness will always follow mistakes, and that patience has no limit. But the truth is, every act of love, every moment of understanding, every word of encouragement comes from energy. And energy, once depleted, has to be restored. When you give endlessly without being seen, your soul starts to dim. You might not notice it at first. You tell yourself it's fine, that love means giving without expectation. But slowly, a heaviness starts to grow. You feel unseen, unacknowledged, unnoticed. You begin to realize that your presence has become invisible, that the very person you're showing up for no longer feels the depth of what you bring into their life. That's when the balance breaks, and it's not because you've stopped caring. It's because you've finally begun to see that love should not feel like a performance with no audience. When someone overlooks your presence, it's not always because they're cruel or careless. It's because they've become comfortable. Your energy has become their normal, your light their daily sunrise. They stop asking how the sun feels because they assume it will rise again tomorrow. But here's the truth: even the sun rests behind clouds, even the ocean retreats to return stronger. Your giving nature, your patience, your love, those are not guarantees, they are gifts. And when gifts are no longer appreciated, the giver begins to withdraw, not in bitterness, but in quiet recognition of their own worth. There comes a moment when your silence says more than your words ever could. When you no longer try to explain your value, but instead embody it by stepping back. That's when realization dawns for the other person. Suddenly, they start to feel the emptiness where your laughter once filled the room, the void where your energy once uplifted them. They replay moments they once dismissed, remembering the gentle things you did that they never thanked you for. That's the moment your presence becomes their longing, and your absence becomes their teacher. But this story isn't just about them realizing what they lost. It's about you realizing what you had all along. Because sometimes you don't understand the power of your own presence until you step away and see the impact it leaves behind. When you are gone, they finally see that your love was not ordinary. It was rare, it was healing, it was something they may never experience again in the same way. But you, standing in your newfound space of peace, begin to see that your love doesn't need to be proven to be real. You understand that being taken for granted doesn't mean you were lacking. It means you were giving to someone who couldn't see beyond themselves. So, if you've ever been that person, the one who gave too much, loved too deeply, and was seen too little, understand this: your presence was never small. It was powerful, it was transformative, and when you finally decide to take it away, not to punish, but to protect your peace, everything changes. Because the moment you choose to walk away from being overlooked, you stop being invisible and start becoming unstoppable. And that, right there, is when they begin to see what they never truly valued until it was gone. There's a saying that silence is golden, but it's more than that. Silence is powerful. Silence is the moment the noise stops and truth begins to echo. You can spend months, even years, trying to make someone understand your worth with words. You can explain your feelings, your boundaries, your pain, again and again, hoping that this time they'll finally get it. But sometimes, no matter how much you speak, they don't hear you, not because your voice is weak, but because they've stopped listening. And that's when silence becomes your greatest teacher, your strongest statement, your most profound act of self-respect. Because absence has a voice, one that cuts through the noise and speaks directly to the heart. When you finally stop showing up, something changes. The world that took your energy for granted starts to feel the difference. They wake up and realize the texts don't come anymore. The encouragement is gone. The familiar warmth has vanished. Suddenly, there's no one there to check in, no one to understand them without words, no one to bring light when things feel heavy. The silence becomes heavy, almost suffocating. What they once dismissed as ordinary now feels irreplaceable. Your absence begins to echo louder than your presence ever did. You see, people often underestimate the gravity of what you bring into their lives until it's removed. It's human nature to get comfortable in the presence of abundance. When someone's love is consistent, we stop questioning whether it will remain. We start assuming it's endless. But nothing in life, no kindness, no loyalty, no presence, is infinite without appreciation. Your silence teaches that lesson in a way that words never could. Because silence makes people sit with their choices, it forces them to feel the consequences of taking someone for granted. It transforms what used to be background noise into a haunting reminder of what's missing. Think about this. When you speak, they can argue, deflect, deny, but when you go silent, there's nothing left to resist. There's no noise to drown out the truth. It's just them and the realization of what they've done or failed to do. Your absence becomes a mirror, reflecting back every moment they ignored you, every time they overlooked the effort you made, every instance they chose indifference over gratitude. And in that reflection, they finally begin to see you clearly, just as you were all along. But the beauty of this moment isn't in their regret, it's in your peace, because when you choose silence, it's not about punishment, it's about preservation. It's about reclaiming your energy from people who couldn't value it. It's about ending the cycle of explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Your silence is your boundary. It says, I'm done repeating lessons you refuse to learn. And when you choose that silence, you regain your power. You stop being defined by their recognition and start being fueled by your own clarity. So, when the noise fades and they finally start to miss what they once ignored, let them sit with that silence. You don't need to rush back to comfort them or soften the edges of their realization. Let the silence do what it does best, teach, reveal, and transform, because your absence will speak to them in ways your presence never could. It will remind them that love, respect, and effort were never guaranteed. They were choices you made every day, and when you stopped choosing them, it wasn't loss, it was liberation. And in that silence, both you and they finally learn the truth. Presence may be forgotten, but absence is unforgettable. Love, when it's not reciprocated, begins to shift. It starts out as this beautiful exchange of energy, two people giving, sharing, building something that feels alive. But when that love becomes one-sided, when appreciation fades and your giving is met with silence or indifference, something changes inside you. You begin to feel the weight of love that no longer flows freely. You begin to realize that what once felt like connection now feels like exhaustion. And that's when you start to understand love without appreciation doesn't stay love for long. It turns into a burden. At first, you ignore the signs. You tell yourself they're busy, distracted. Maybe they'll notice your efforts soon. You keep giving the calls, the messages, the patience, the support, hoping that one day they'll finally see what they have. You keep pouring into a cup that never fills back up, but every time your love goes unacknowledged, you lose a little more of yourself. You start to feel small in a space where your heart used to feel big. You start questioning if you're enough when the truth is you were simply giving to someone who stopped appreciating the value of what you bring. Love should be a force that lifts both people higher. It should expand you, not drain you. It should feel like growth, not depletion. But when you love someone who doesn't see you, your heart becomes tired from carrying what should have been shared. You begin to feel the loneliness of being surrounded by someone who doesn't recognize your presence anymore. And that kind of loneliness cuts deeper than solitude ever could, because being alone is peaceful, but being unseen while loving deeply is painful. So, you start to pull back, not because you stopped loving, but because you can no longer continue loving yourself less in order to love them more. That's the quiet breaking point, the moment you realize that staying means betraying your own heart. You can't keep giving your energy to someone who doesn't value it, because every time you do, you teach them that your presence doesn't need to be appreciated for it to remain. And that's not love, that's survival. When you finally walk away, it's not out of anger, it's out of clarity. You begin to see that you were never asking for too much, you were simply asking the wrong person. You realize that your love wasn't the problem, it was your audience. You were performing acts of love for someone who had stopped watching. And when you leave, something beautiful happens, you feel light again. The heaviness you carried wasn't love, it was the weight of unreciprocated effort. You begin to feel your own presence again, your own worth again. You rediscover how good it feels to give without being drained, to love without losing yourself. And as time passes, they'll start to feel it, the absence of your energy, the lack of your warmth. They'll start remembering how effortless you made love seem, how peaceful it felt to be around someone who gave so freely. They'll start to understand that what they thought would always be there has vanished, and they'll miss the ease that your love brought. But for you, that chapter is already over, because now you know that love should never require you to disappear to be seen. So, when your heart aches for what was, remind yourself, love without appreciation is not love, it's endurance. You are not meant to endure love, you are meant to experience it. You are meant to be seen, to be valued, to be celebrated for the light you bring. And when you stop giving that light to those who dim it, you make space for the ones who will never let it fade. That's not heartbreak, that's freedom. Distance is a strange and powerful thing. When you're too close to someone, your emotions blur your perspective. You see them through the lens of hope, of love, of what you wish they were, not necessarily who they've shown themselves to be. You make excuses for their behavior, you overlook the little hurts, and you convince yourself that loyalty means staying, even when staying is breaking you. But when you create distance, when you finally step back from the noise and emotion, something incredible happens. You start to see clearly. The fog lifts, the truth emerges, distance reveals everything that closeness concealed. When you're inside a situation that drains you, it's like being trapped in a storm. You can't see the damage because you're too busy trying to survive it. You tell yourself it's just a rough patch, that things will change, that your love will fix it. But the moment you step outside that storm, you look back and realize just how much you endured. You start to see that the love you thought was mutual was mostly effort on your side. You start to recognize how often your needs were silenced so theirs could be met. And in that realization, something shifts. You stop seeing them as your source of happiness and start recognizing yourself as the source of your strength. Distance gives you space to breathe. It gives you perspective that's impossible to find when you're constantly entangled in emotion. Suddenly, the little things that once kept you tied start to lose their power. The words that used to hurt don't sting the same way anymore. The absence that once terrified you starts to feel like freedom. You realize that the peace you were chasing in them actually existed within you all along. You just couldn't hear it over the noise of trying to be enough for someone who didn't see you. And while you're finding your clarity, something happens on their side too. They start to feel the emptiness that your distance creates. The texts aren't coming, the support isn't there, the calmness you brought into their chaos has vanished. They look around and notice how quiet everything feels without you in it. That's when they start to remember the small things, the sound of your laugh, the way you listened, the way you made even the worst days feel bearable. Your absence starts to haunt them because, for the first time, they're seeing the reality of what your presence meant. But the beauty of distance isn't in making them realize what they lost. It's in helping you realize what you gained. Because when you step away, you don't just leave behind a person who couldn't appreciate you. You leave behind a version of yourself who kept accepting less. You start reclaiming your time, your peace, your self-respect. You remember what it feels like to live without the constant ache of trying to prove your worth. You remember that love shouldn't require you to lose yourself in order to keep it. And maybe, as you stand in that clarity, you'll realize something deeper. Distance doesn't destroy what's real, it exposes it. If a connection was meant to grow, it will bridge the gap. But if it was built on dependency, comfort, or illusion, distance will dissolve it. Either way, the truth reveals itself. You'll stop chasing what was and start embracing what is. You'll stop missing what drained you and start loving the quiet that healed you. So don't fear distance. Don't see it as loss. See it as perspective. Because it's in that space between you and them that you finally see what love is supposed to look like. And sometimes the greatest peace you'll ever find is in the moment you step back and realize you were never losing them, you were finding you. Walking away has always been misunderstood. People see it as weakness, as surrender, as failure. But the truth is, walking away is one of the most powerful declarations of self-worth a person can ever make. It's not about giving up, it's about standing up. It's about recognizing that your heart deserves peace, that your time deserves respect, and that your energy deserves to be met, not drained. Walking away is not the end of your story. It's the moment you stop letting someone else write it for you. There comes a time in every person's life when they have to choose between staying comfortable in pain or stepping into the unknown for the sake of peace. And that moment is terrifying, because walking away means letting go of what's familiar, even if what's familiar is hurting you. It means choosing silence over chaos, solitude over dependency, clarity over confusion. It means trusting that your worth doesn't need their validation to be real. That's not weakness. That's strength at its purest form. Because it takes courage to say, I love you, but I love myself too. When you decide to walk away, something powerful shifts inside you. You stop begging for love to stay, and you start inviting peace to enter. You stop chasing closure from someone who was never capable of giving it, and you create closure within yourself. You stop explaining your boundaries and start living them. You realize that the only person who truly needed to see your worth was you. And once you do, the pain that once paralyzed you becomes the very thing that propels you forward. But let's be real. Walking away doesn't always feel empowering in the beginning. Sometimes it feels like breaking. You'll miss them, you'll question your choice, you'll look back at the memories and wonder if maybe it could have been different. That's normal, that's human. Growth doesn't happen without discomfort. But over time, as you sit in your silence and breathe in your own peace, you start to feel the freedom in your decision. You start to notice how much lighter life feels when you're no longer carrying someone else's emotional weight. You realize that peace isn't something you find in another person. It's something you create within yourself when you refuse to settle for less than you deserve. And here's the truth they'll eventually face. When you walk away, it's not just your presence they lose, it's the stability, the compassion, the understanding that came with it. They'll search for that same energy in other people and never quite find it. Because your kind of love, your patience, your loyalty, it's rare. They'll realize too late that what they mistook for weakness was actually grace. And in that moment, while they sit in their regret, you'll already be standing in your growth. Walking away isn't about teaching them a lesson. It's about learning your own. It's about learning that love without respect will never be enough, that giving without receiving will always lead to emptiness. And that no matter how much you care for someone, you can't heal them by breaking yourself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for them and for yourself is to let go. So when you walk away, hold your head high. Don't look back for validation. Don't wait for them to understand. Your peace is not up for negotiation. The strength it takes to walk away from something that no longer serves you is the same strength that will lead you to everything that will. Because walking away is not the end, it's the beginning of becoming who you were always meant to be. Eventually, there comes that inevitable moment, the one where everything you tried to explain, every emotion they brushed off, every tear they ignored, suddenly makes sense to them. But it doesn't happen while you're still there. It happens after you've gone, after the texts stop coming, after your name stops lighting up their phone, after your laughter fades into memory. That's when they feel it, the void you left behind. That's when they realize that your presence wasn't just comforting, it was grounding. It wasn't just habit, it was home. They start to understand that what they took for granted wasn't replaceable, it was rare. And the silence that once felt peaceful now feels unbearable. They'll replay moments that once seemed small, the way you remembered the things they forgot about themselves, the way your words had a calm that steadied them, the way you always found the right thing to say when they couldn't find their own. At first, they'll try to move on quickly, they'll distract themselves, fill the space with noise, tell themselves it's fine. But silence has a way of creeping back in, and it carries your name. They'll realize that every new connection feels shallow compared to what you brought, that the comfort they once dismissed has turned into a craving they can't satisfy. And suddenly they'll understand your presence wasn't ordinary, it was the very thing holding everything together. But here's the beauty of this: by the time they realize what they lost, you will have already changed. You won't be waiting on the other side of regret. You won't be holding on to hope that they'll finally see your worth, because absence doesn't just teach them, it transforms you. In your silence, you find your strength. In your stillness, you find your peace. You begin to understand that your value never depended on someone else's ability to recognize it. You learn that being missed is not the same as being valued, and that the love that only grows in your absence was never the love you needed. As they sit in their realization, you're already standing in your liberation. The version of you that once begged to be seen has been replaced by one who knows she never needed to prove her worth. You've learned that closure doesn't come from apologies, it comes from acceptance. You've learned that letting go isn't about giving up, it's about creating space for what's real. You've learned that not everyone is meant to walk with you forever, some are just lessons dressed as love. And in that moment when they finally feel your absence like a weight they can't lift, you'll feel nothing but peace, because you'll know that your love was pure, your effort was real, and your intentions were true. You'll know that what they lost was never just a person. It was an experience of grace, empathy, and unwavering loyalty. And you'll no longer need their realization to validate your worth, because you've already found it within yourself. So when your absence finally teaches them what your presence could not, smile not out of pride, but out of peace. You've given them their awakening, and you've received yours. Let their realization be the echo of your growth. Because while they're mourning what they lost, you're celebrating what you found: freedom, clarity, and an unshakable sense of self. And that is the quiet, undeniable power of walking away. Their regret becomes the reflection of your rebirth. In the end, this isn't just a story about being missed, it's a story about being found. It's about realizing that your presence, your love, and your light were never small. You were never just there. You were the peace in the chaos, the understanding in the silence, the heartbeat that kept everything steady. You gave not because you had to, but because it's who you are. And when someone becomes so used to that kind of love, they begin to mistake it for air, something that will always be there, invisible yet essential. But the truth is, even air feels heavier when it's gone. And when you finally take your energy back, when you remove yourself from the places that no longer value you, the world they live in begins to change, because your absence has power. Yet, this power doesn't come from revenge or pride, it comes from clarity. You begin to understand that your worth was never measured by how others treated you, it was revealed by how you treated yourself when they didn't. Walking away, choosing silence, creating distance, these aren't acts of cruelty. They are acts of growth. They are the moments when you stop chasing acknowledgement and start honoring truth. You stop fighting to be understood and start focusing on being whole. You stop trying to remind someone of your value and begin to live like you finally believe in it yourself. And that shift, that quiet inner transformation, is the moment everything changes. For them, your absence becomes a mirror. It reflects back every time they took your effort lightly, every time they met your love with apathy, every time they assumed you'd always be there. The things they dismiss start to echo in their mind: your laughter, your support, your warmth. But for you, that mirror becomes a window, one that shows you what peace looks like when it's no longer tied to pleasing someone else. You see your own strength clearly for the first time. You realize that you didn't lose them, they lost the version of you that would have done anything to stay. And in that realization, something powerful happens. You stop mourning what's gone and start celebrating what's begun. This journey isn't easy. Choosing yourself after years of giving is one of the hardest things a person can do. There will be days when you miss them, moments when nostalgia tries to pull you back, nights when your silence feels heavier than your presence ever did. But remember, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means forgiving yourself for staying too long and thanking yourself for finally leaving. It means accepting that some people can only understand love through loss and that their realization is not your responsibility. You were never meant to teach them your worth through suffering. You were meant to rediscover it through freedom. So as you walk forward, hold your head high. Let their regret stay behind you. Don't let the echoes of what could have been drown out the peace of what is. You've stepped into a new chapter, one where you no longer have to shrink to be seen or break to be understood. You are the calm after your own storm, the proof that love doesn't die when it's unappreciated. It transforms, it redirects, it grows. And maybe, just maybe, the most beautiful ending is realizing that you were never waiting to be missed. You were waiting to be free. And in your freedom, you finally become the person you were always meant to be, whole, peaceful, and unshakably aware of your own worth. Before we part ways, I want to take a moment to thank you not just for listening, but for feeling. For opening your heart to the truth that sometimes growth comes not from being loved, but from learning when to walk away. You've sat with pain, reflection, and truth today, and that's not easy. But the fact that you're here hearing these words means you're already stronger than you realize. You've already taken a step toward peace, and that's something to be proud of. Thank you for allowing me to share this message with you, a message not about loss, but about rediscovery. Because what we've really talked about today isn't heartbreak, it's awakening. It's about realizing that your presence was powerful, that your love was enough, and that sometimes people need your absence to see it. But you don't need their regret to validate your worth. You only need your own recognition of it. As you leave here today, I want you to remember one thing. You are not defined by who failed to see you. You are defined by how you chose to rise when they didn't. You are not just someone who walked away, you are someone who chose peace over pain, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over settling. That choice makes you powerful. That choice makes you whole. So go forward with grace. Let your silence speak where words once struggled. Let your absence remind the world that your energy is sacred. And most of all, never forget your love is not something people earn. It's something they are honored to receive. The right hearts will never need to lose you to know your worth. Thank you truly for your time, your openness, and your courage to grow. May you walk away from this space lighter, freer, and more certain of who you are. Until next time, protect your peace, cherish your presence, and never stop walking toward the version of yourself that no longer needs to be seen to be valued. Thank you, and goodbye.